Grady Powell, host of Forged in Fire.
Kyle Mann.
I'm Jay Warner Wallace.
Kira Davis.
This is Ben Up.
Hey, this is Dave Bacon.
Carrie Pomeroli.
This is Mike Reiner.
This is Ethan Nicole.
This is Leanne Morgan.
This is Graham Parker, the 50GP, and this is why you should never
How I got suckered in.
I'm so embarrassed that I'm here.
You're wasting your time. You got better things to do.
never listen.
Those darling, yummy Reverend and the Reprobate.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Reverend and the Reprobate. I am Lucas Pinkard. I will be the Reverend today, as I am an actual pastor, and with me, as always, is a man who's wearing a shirt of a mediocre band. It is Big Dan Gibsons.
Hey, what's up, buddy?
What's going on, man?
Whatever. The Foo Fighters are great.
They're wonderful.
Yeah, Foo Fighters are great. Guns N' Roses is great.
The Foo
Alter
Fighters
Bridge
make
is
terrible movies.
I haven't seen it.
And I
You're
haven't
talking
either.
about the horror movie?
Yeah, I
forget
haven't
what
either.
It's called. The
It's
movie.
so bad. Studio
It's
666.
Yeah.
Yes, it looks
I think it was
incredibly
supposed to intentionally be bad, but I haven't seen it, so I don't know.
Never mind. So
hey,
today on the show, we have Wes Martin of Break Room Audio.
Yeah.
The Break Room Audio on Instagram.
It's the one.
He authored
Wes
a book
Martin.
called Mix With Your Ears, Not With Your Eyes. He's also an instructor at MediaTech Institute and instructed our very own producer, Colton Smith-Templin.
We didn't get into this that much this time, and maybe round two we do. But he's a well accomplished guitar player also.
He's a very accomplished guitar player.
And we didn't get into it as much here, but this is we're just scratching the surface.
He's got a beautiful
on this, guys.
Gibson hollow body in the background.
Yep.
During this entire interview. It's absolutely stunning. So Wes talks to us a little bit about what his favorite Star Wars sound is, what he would do if put in a room with somebody who said, hey, I want to sound like this. How do you produce somebody that's looking for a specific sound versus somebody that's trying to be creative? Mm-hmm. And what does it really mean to mix with your ears and not with your eyes? Briefly, how do you fix stuff with your ears that you can't fix with a graphic EQ? It's a more complicated answer than you may think. So make sure.
What is mastering?
Yeah, what is mastering
question.
At all? Also, Danley does Columbo impressions, which you guys won't get to hear. And y'all make sure to like, subscribe, ding the little bell, give us a review if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or the Podchaser apps or sites, so that we can get some feedback from y'all. And without any further ado, Weston Martin. Hey everybody, and Sweet Young Expo. We have on these airwaves today one of the instructors at MediaTech Institute who taught our young Colton, who no doubt will be happy to perform his trick for his former instructor by the end of this episode.
And Kyle, our friend who still has...
Kyle Rogers, who...
I think he still has bathroom issues.
I think he's still in the bathroom, likely. And pray for Kyle. He's also the author of Mix With Your Ears, a very accomplished guitar player on top of all of that. It is truly a man, myth, and legend. It's the wonderful, fabulous, the very talented Wes Martin. What's going on, man?
What's up? Thank y'all for having me. This is great.
Yeah, absolutely.
I am the myth, and legend.
He's the myth, huh?
And don't call me truly.
I'm here.
So
hello. That's right.
We're doing a...
You have a wonderful voice.
Yeah,
it's almost as good as mine.
No, it's not. It's just this mic. I turned it up, remember?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, I remember.
So well done.
This is what I teach, guys. This is what I teach at school. If hey, how do I sound better? Well, if you go up to the mic, you can sound like Batman. And then that's it. You graduate.
How do you...
That explains how Colton made it through the program. He's really great with proximity. The knobs are a little confusing, but proximity he's got down. So
Colton was awesome, by the way.
Yeah, and continues to be. He's been wonderful for our show and for our church. So I'm curious.
Good.
Mostly for our show.
Yeah, I'm curious about your story. Like, how do you get into not just the audio engineering and the sound mixing side of things, but also into teaching about that? Because that seems a very odd niche to find yourself in. Most people, when they think about music, they think about the guys that are on stage. They're like, you know what, I want to be a rock star, not I want to teach people about how to make things sound good. What is that journey like, for Wes?
Yeah. So I grew up, my dad was a producer, engineer, guitar player. So all the things I talk about today is kind of how I started off. So I grew up and he had this sounds funny now, but back then it sounded impressive. 24-track recording studio.
Oh, wow.
And he had one of the first 24-track recording studios in the area. Of course, now we have unlimited. So we're like, 24 tracks, come on. But back then, when he got his 24-track machine, I was like 8 or 9. I was like, what are you going to do with 24 tracks? But I got to learn from, he was just a master at what he did, but we also had a lot of other producers come in, amazing musicians. And I kind of learned the ropes and just fell in love with it. The smell of equipment mixed with coffee and sometimes cigarette, coming where I come from, it just brings me back, so I had a great upbringing, great dad. But I was really interested in guitar first. So I wanted to be a guitar player professionally. So as soon as I graduated college, I hit the road, toured 250 days a year. But while I was doing that, I got to play in a lot of sessions and see how all these different producers worked and, how recording works. And so fast forward after I'm married and have kids and don't want to be away from my kids anymore.
Right.
I started getting to actually just full-time produce, mix, master, songwrite. And years later, I was approached by a good buddy of mine, John Meyer, who said, hey, we need an instructor at MediaTech. And I was like, what's MediaTech? And so I came and visited. I was like, whoa, this is amazing. So I jumped in, found out that I loved teaching. And a few years later, I had the opportunity to be also director of education. And I've been here almost 9 years.
Wow.
Next month. Yeah.
That's pretty impressive.
We both have a deep gratitude for your work at Dallas Sound Labs and now MediaTech, because we both befriended different producers that were going there, in attendance to learn how to produce, and we got to use the amazing facilities.
Yeah, they are. Yeah. When they say state of the art and incredible, it is. It
really are.
Yeah, it's not only that they're state of the art and they're incredible in the sense that like the newest stuff that everybody's putting out, they want in the hands of the MediaTech students. But also like the stuff that nobody else can get a hold of, that everybody wants that sound, like the old Neve boards. Like there's one of those with these like classic preamps that produced all of the music that we grew up loving. They've got one of those too that they can teach you how to use and how to use like reel-to-reel stuff. And it's such an incredible facility.
And it
so
still
cool.
Smells like cigarettes, and that's how you know it's real.
I think it smells like burning servo motors and coffee, but I'm sure there's some cigarette in there.
There was. I did order this candle from Welcome to 1979. It's the candle they make that smells like tape, and I thought it was so cool. And then I lit it. And I was like, I don't really want my room to smell like tape. So I gave it to another instructor who appreciates it even more.
Yeah,
it's like the Harry Potter. God, good grief,
Harry Potter.
Harry Potter.
That's a bad bathroom.
Jelly beans. The jelly beans that they have all the different flavors that you don't want to actually eat.
Yeah, the every flavored beans.
Yeah, I want to have booger, gummy bears, but I'm never going to eat them.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting in concept, but just terrible in practice.
Yes. Yeah.
So you mentioned that there were 3 different things that you did. You were editing, you were producing, and you were mixing. When the average person hears those things, and I know even when we started out recording, somebody was like, yeah, this person's the producer, this person's the editor, this person's going to mix. I'm like, okay, one of you should be able to do all that. That sounds like it's the same job, but it's really not. So what is your approach to those 3 things, and how are they different whenever somebody's taking an approach like that? The producer, they're in the mixer's chair, or they're editing. How are those different?
That's a great question. So
thank you.
And that's
I ask
one of
only
the
the greatest questions.
I teach in music production at MediaTech. So
hey,
one of the things that I start off saying is, producer versus mixer versus mastering. A producer is the definition of a producer, because there's so many I've heard a beat producer and a music producer, and a producer is someone who oversees a project from the very beginning to the very end. That's really what a producer is. Now there are different types, meaning they have different fortes in their background. Like a music producer, I think of Quincy Jones or Rick Rubin. Quincy has more degrees than a thermometer, right? Like he's gone to school, he's went to Berkeley, he knows how to do all these compositions and play trumpet. Whereas Rick Rubin, who is also a music producer, to my knowledge, does not play an instrument, does not prefer to sit behind a console. He just has a great ear for music and knows how to direct certain energy. So I look at a producer as a director of a movie, like they're directing the project from beginning to end. Whereas once the project is recorded and produced, it's time to send all of those tracks, let's say, hopefully not this many, 50 tracks, but send it off to a mix engineer. And that mix engineer will take everything, that's like on a microscopic level, and they'll get all of the levels and the EQ and compression and just make it sound really good. And then once that's done and approved, they'll send just a stereo file, unless it's, of course, Atmos and surround. Normally it's just a stereo file to a mastering engineer who will then, and the mastering is just the big picture, like macro. So they're really lifting and separating the sound. So lifting to make it loud, competitively loud, and then separating with EQ and just making everything even.
Okay.
And then from there, it's digital distribution, or if you're still doing CD or vinyl. From there.
Yeah, I'm glad you touched on mastering, because we've recorded some things, we've had some of them mastered, but I still don't feel like I have a good concept of what that means.
What mastering is?
Yeah, like
yeah.
It's, I mean, that still sounds confusing. I get it. It's the macro, it's the big overall picture. It's not just in necessarily individual tracks. Then that does make more sense, but it still feels like such a mystery.
Yeah. So
what do those guys do?
Yeah, briefly just describe to us what a masterer does.
Do it again.
He takes a stereo track and he like re-levels it, but what does that really mean in practicality?
Well, for example, and this is a great segue to
wonderful.
This book.
Yes.
We're talking about
mixing with
in the
your
book,
nose.
we're talking about frequencies.
Yeah.
So if you have, if you've ever mixed something before, your head is in it, and you to an extent, you lose the big picture objectivity.
Right.
You're just in it, right? So if one or five or really probably all the tracks have one frequency, let's say 300 hertz. And for those who don't know, 300 hertz is boxy. It's kind of like I always think putting a styrofoam cup over your mouth. There's 300 hertz for you.
Can you do Bane, the voice of Bane, when you do that?
At 300 hertz?
At 300 hertz.
That makes sense. So Bane's voice is essentially 300 hertz.
Yes, sure.
Yeah.
So if you hear Bane,
that's why it broke Batman's back, because it was 300 hertz. If it had been 200 hertz,
it wouldn't have been enough hertz.
It wouldn't have been enough hertz.
It wouldn't have been enough hertz. I saw what you did there.
Thank you. It's better if you listen to it, though.
And you have 50 tracks of a little bit of 300 hertz.
Yeah.
What happens is 300 hertz starts to really increase. That's a lot of energy of 300 hertz.
Yeah.
So when the mastering engineer, who are brain geniuses, they do this all day long. So they'll hear this song and they're like, oh, there's kind of a overflow of 300 hertz here. And then it's kind of making me squint around 3K. So they're going to make small adjustments to make everything even, or equal opportunity offenders for frequency world.
Cool. Okay. So I'm curious about when this was the issue that we consistently ran into when we were playing. We would go and we'd record with a friend of ours, even if we paid for studio time, right? We would pay, $5,000 and we would be with somebody for 2 days. And the goal was, let's record either a song a day or try to get 3 songs done in a grand total of what essentially was 24 hours of actual in the studio time. So we were just hustling the entire time.
Yeah, we only had a couple of days with Michael Elvis Basquette.
Okay, great. So, so we would get in there, we would work really hard. We would get back something that, we'd go back to the studio, they'd let us listen to it, and man, it sounded great. They'd bounce it to a CD, we would put it in our car, and it sounded like hot garbage. Yeah. Why does that happen?
Well, there's a lot of reasons I can say.
Yeah, come on with them.
Let's go with the top 10.
Top 10 reasons why your song sounds like garbage in your car.
Number 10, the check already cleared and they don't care.
Yes.
Now, here, it depends on the It depends on the environment that you were in. And hopefully it was well treated.
Right.
But one of the things we talk about here at MediaTek is like, if you have a home studio and you're constantly doing mixes, you're like, man, this sounds great. And then you go to your car, you're like, what am I doing with my life? It's because that you are not being told the truth in that room.
Oh.
For either your speakers and really like in here, this is an office, so it's a lot of echo and reverb. It'd be a horrible place to mix. So there's a lot of standing waves. Standing waves are just like built up frequencies around you. So if there's like, let's say 100 hertz invisible standing wave right here, any sound wave that passes through it to my ear, it magnifies that. And I'm like, ooh, there's a lot of low end here. So I'm going to turn it down, but that's not true. And when I get to my car, it sounds like a wimp. I'm like, what happened to all the low end?
Right.
So really the studio you were in was not good. I'm just kidding. There could be a lot of reasons, but that's usually
probably it.
What
it was your studio.
What's going on? Yeah.
Trick question.
No,
it was your studio. That's where we were.
So that makes sense. Like the mixing environment does make a change,
which is why people spend so much money deadening their studio.
Right.
That's true. I do want to add that space could have been just fine, because I've been in a lot of sessions to where, if I am the client or the producer, whatever, the client's ear, the artist's ear, as an artist, you're not mixing all day. You haven't really built that template. So you're really excited. And maybe they have the low end up and, oh man, this sounds really cool. But then you listen more and more and more and you're like, oh, I just heard something that I didn't hear before that I don't like. I wish I had heard that before. And you could go back and say, yeah, it is there. So it's a whole learning process, but it really does help. The better listening space you have, the less you have to go to your car or somewhere else to reference it.
Which is really why you need to be mixing with your ears,
not with your
eyes. That's right. That's right.
So I want to get into some stuff in the book here in just a second, but before we dive heavy into that, I'm curious what you would say to just like an average person, right? So an average person is looking at the songs that they hear on the radio, and they're like, I really love this. I really love this particular producer. I love their style of stuff. And they come to you and they're like, all right, Wes, I want to put together an album. I want to do it in, this person's style, and I want you to produce it, right? How do you, as a producer, right, how do you approach the creative process, let's say, with somebody who comes to you with fresh ideas versus somebody that comes to you with like, hey, this is what I want to do. This is the sound that I want. How do you approach the creative process with each one of those, and which do you prefer?
So again, setting it up, I have one client that wants to sound like in the style of this artist.
Yep.
And then another client that is just that's the one I did.
They're just coming to you with their own ideas. They're like, hey, I've got some stuff, but I just want to work with you. Like, let's be creative and do whatever. Which one of those is more fun to work with? Which one of them is easier?
Well, yeah, for me, it probably would be more difficult to work with the one who's like, these are just some ideas I have. But then again, it would be easy for me because I would love that. I would love that because there's a blank canvas. The other one I've done a lot, whereas, hey, I'm going for this kind of sound, or and we could do that.
If I told you,
there's more constraints there,
right?
So like if I told you I wanted to sound like Tori Amos, you would be like, okay, okay, but you'd rather work with a blank canvas, probably at that point.
I would just have you listen to Jackie over and over and over, Tori Amos, and we'd really just get it. No, I'm kidding. If you want to go down that road, I mean, if you wanted to sound like Tori, I would. This is really important though. Like I'm not joking. Really, really, really get on. This is called pre-production. Get on the same page with the client.
Yeah.
What's the vision? Where are we going? Because if you don't really both know, that's going to be a train wreck. I know, but if they're like, but I will say nobody's ever come to me, and I don't think they would, saying, hey, I want to, but they're like, I'm really inspired. This is the kind of, and I would say, well, yeah, cool, because it's really important to know what makes that type of music tick. It's the psychology of the music. So you have your guidelines and you'll stick to it. But hopefully you can find something original out of that. Because that's what I love to do, is the creative part, is finding something new and surprising. Because just doing the same stuff over and over, you might like that for a while, but you're going to get bored of it, after a couple of times of doing that.
There is something to be said for, listening to music that influences you, and then obviously like developing your own style out of it. I think this is one of the things. We both love the band Greta Van Fleet. We think they're awesome, but after a couple of times, I can't believe you
just said that.
After a couple of times of listening to Greta Van Fleet,
here it is. This is what he actually thinks.
This is like, I love them, but I felt like after a couple of times of listening to the album, like I heard this on Zeppelin 1 through 3. I've heard this on, other albums. Like, why is it that, the creative process lends itself so much to that influence, right? So as a producer, do you get people to shift that? Because we know Greta Van Fleet's obviously very successful because they have that sound, right? And we know that there are certain sounds, certain chord progressions and stuff that will consistently sell, right? So how do you as a producer help an artist or a band like create their own thing whenever they've come in with, something that kind of sounds like everybody else?
Yeah, the first thing I think of, and I'm sure y'all have experienced this or seen this, is every artist has their default, like their go-to, like what they'll just, whether it's an artist singing and then they start kind of doing something with their mouth or kind of trying to sound like this person or that person. Just and that's all of us. To as a guitar player, I wanted to sound like Slash growing up. It's a long time ago, but. It's just what they do. So as a producer, you're overseeing this project and you know where you want to go. So you have more objectivity than they do. And if you see, okay, I see what you're doing, but what if we tried a couple of other things? And that's where trust comes in. But one of the things that I think is important is to set up, kind of like Rick Rubin is really good at, setting up the vibe, setting up the atmosphere that fosters such vulnerability. Because here's the thing, the reason people go to their default settings, of like, I'm going to sound like, a lot of people with John Mayer, if they're trying to do that John Mayer, that kind of thing. And even John Mayer, in my opinion, was kind of doing a little bit of that. That if they're going to that place in their mind, it's safe. And it's like, well, I sound cool like this, so I'm going to stay here.
I never wanna apple pie.
Eject.
That's right. I love John Mayer though.
Oh, me too.
But
I don't.
If I want them to get out of that safe spot, that's really musically they're going to be naked. It's very vulnerable, and nobody likes to feel that way. So it's so important that there is trust between the producer and the artist, and so that we can go to these places that, I might sound so stupid, but you know what, it might be amazing. Arif Mardin told he's the guy that got the Bee Gees sound. The Bee Gees, the lead singer was actually just singing low, and he's like, "This isn't working. I want you to sing an octave up." He's like, "I'm going to sound like this," and he's like, I know. And so they did it, and they're like, hey. So you have to get to a place that is uncomfortable, but the most important thing, and this is something I say, like most schools like this will teach the technical. Here's how a mic works, or all this. But the second part that's so important is the relationship, the interpersonal part, because you can have the best gear, the Neve console, the $10,000 microphone, and then your artist shows up and is just in a bad place in your head, in their head. So all the gear doesn't matter. How are you going to get them to that safe, vulnerable place where they can really, really experiment? And that's where you find really cool original stuff, is when you take a risk.
So how do you build that trust?
Great point. Yeah. I really like that.
So how do you as a producer build that trust? Because like the guys in the band will all have that. They'll either have a certain amount of trust, or as we learned from Metallica's Some Kind of Monster, a certain amount of built up resentments and animosities, right?
He quit the band.
Yeah, like everybody's idea except for mine is a bad idea, or like we have this one one thing that we really want to do, and then as the producer you come in and you're like, well, what if we tweak this a little bit?
Peacemaker somewhere.
Yeah, like how do you build that trust, because you don't have the depth of relationship there. You're likely not spending as much time with them. So how do you do that in a short amount of time?
Good news is I don't believe that you have to have a depth of a relationship.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is, and hopefully I remember this producer's name because I'm totally borrowing from his theory, but I agree with it, which is you have to at least be more than the other guy on that side of the glass telling them what to do with their music.
Yeah.
And what that means is before I meet with an artist, hey, let's go get coffee. Let's have some kind of normal relationship. And we don't have to be best friends, but be an acquaintance. You like that team? Did you see the Mavericks last night? I don't watch sports, but I did hear about the Mavericks, So
do you like Harry Potter?
Normal life stuff.
Yeah.
And so now, okay, Wes is more than the guy telling me what to do with my music. And here's another thing I talk about. When somebody says, I really like Dan, what they're really saying on a subconscious level is, I like how I feel when I'm around Dan. Now, if other people say, I can't stand Dan, what Colton was telling me today.
Those people, they don't know what they're talking
about. This guy, no. What they're saying is,
those people deserve the stuff that I give them. Go ahead.
I don't like how I feel when I'm around Dan. Now we all love Dan. But the point is, how do you make people feel? And I, for better or worse, wear my emotions on my sleeve. Sure. So I'm bent for like very honest and open book. You don't have to be that way to make this work, but honesty, hopefully there's a good vibe. There has to be a good vibe between y'all or it's not going to work. But I would say that the good news is, because it's impossible to become best friends, right?
Right.
But just take them out, meet with them a week before the session, and just start there. Yeah.
So you've mentioned a few times about bringing a good vibe, and your episode's going to air right after, like previously we just had Ian Martin Allison on, right, who has made a career as a side musician. And him and Scott Devine from Scott's Bass Lessons on their podcast talk a lot about, what are the things you have to bring to the studio. And one of the things that they always mention is that you have to have a good vibe, that they would rather have somebody to play with, whether it's live or in the studio, that's got a good vibe than a guy who can play all the parts perfectly and is a jerk. Like 100% of the time, like that guy is going to get looked over for the dude that has a good vibe. Now, that said, if a good vibe is one of the things that we need to bring to the studio, what are, the other maybe 3 or 4 things that a person needs to bring, a musician, whether it's a side musician or a member of a band? What are the maybe 3 or 4 other things that they need to bring to the studio every time they could come in? If good vibe is number one.
These are all intangible things. These are literally.
Well, I mean, it could be snacks, right? Because that was something that we didn't know, that like if you book a 12 hours of studio time and you're going to use that whole day to do it, guess what you're not going to get? Lunch. Right. So like if you don't have something to snack on, you're just going to be stuck in a room on your own for hours and hours and hours wishing that, somebody brought Cheetos.
Yeah.
So
Food
you could,
and water
so
are
you
the
could
basics,
wipe
even
them on
in the
your
studio.
Arlex.
Right. I would say, and this is part of a good vibe. It's not just like, dim lit room with candles and stuff like that.
Right.
It's also bringing professionalism.
Okay.
And here's what a professional is to me. We always come wherever we go to work, the studio, we always have like a backpack of life on, of our personal life. And, this just happened, or, the stuff that naturally just weighs us down, and everybody's got it. But what a professional does is when they get to the door, they take that off and they leave their ego at the door and they walk in and it's about the job. And so to maintain a good vibe, got to leave, especially as a producer, because everybody's looking at you, and you're the thermostat. You're going to set the temperature of the room. So if they're coming in and like, all right, boss, what are we going to do today? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm just trying to get over blah blah blah. That's not vibe killer, right?
Yeah.
But a professional is no matter what just happened before I walked in that door, I'm going to leave it there, and that's really hard to do. But a professional leaves it there, and it's like, yeah, let's get to it. How can I help you? And it's really like serving each other in the song. And man, this is one of the hard things I learned was am a guitar player, but I was a session player. And when I was a lot younger, I always wanted to, I got this new pedal, or I got this new effect, or this new lick I want to use. But what I finally realized is it's not about that. If it gets to be used on the song and it's right, cool. But it's about the song. In the studio, the book of business is the song. What's right for it? And in that way, the ego's at the door. Oh, I just suggested something that didn't turn out to be good. Doesn't mean that I'm wrong. Right. It's just not right for the song. So a good vibe, but part of that is bringing professionalism. And of course, like you said, snacks, water, the basics,
the tangibles.
Yeah, snacks are so, like, that is one of the very first things that I wasn't told, like, well, we don't want to make a mess in the studio and we're really particular about it. And so I was like, well, then that means like no food, no drink. And we get there, and that same guy that told us he didn't want the studio to be a mess was like, you guys didn't bring any food?
Yeah, they
like,
just,
no, you just gave us, like, it was part of this thing that we're not supposed to bring anything. And he's like, well, you're like, once that door's shut, it doesn't get open for the next 12 hours. So we were 2 hours late starting our session because we had to go get food. And he was like, yeah, y'all have to provide lunch for me too, because I'm not leaving either. Like, what the heck?
Yeah, he
thanks a lot.
He meant
exactly.
He meant no girls.
Yeah, likely.
Yeah, it's no girls. We're here to work.
Yeah, which is another huge thing is what you do when you get to the studio. So let's get to your book, Mixing with Your Ears and Not with Your Eyes, right? We talked about the difference between, how it sounds in the studio and how it sounds whenever you hop into the car, and that those two things can be drastically different. But if we were to go online, let's say, and we're looking for like how to mix, like I'm at home, I'm playing on my, my garage band, I'm trying to get something to sound good because I'm just trying to track some ideas. I've got something that sounds funky. I go to some YouTube tutorials, and immediately what they're going to tell me is like exactly what you said. Find 300 hertz and bury it. You need to scoop the mids at these frequencies and these frequencies, and look at where your sound waves are, and then EQ based on the sound waves. Yeah. What your book is telling us is that's a bad idea to start that way. Why is it so important that we sort of ignore a lot of what the new conventional wisdom is on mixing based on the frequencies and stuff that we're seeing? Why is it so important to learn to mix with our ears?
Because that's how my daddy did. No, that's how we used to do it. I'll tell you what. I would say, what I'm about to say doesn't make for a great book title, like Mix with Your Ears, Not Your Eyes. Nowadays you should make, Kerry Crafton, who's our campus director, and, he's worked with everybody. He's got gold records. He just said, you want to mix with both. You have the tools that you can use. But I think the point of that saying that I got from my mentors, so many engineers have said this: mix with your ears, not your eyes. Oh, but it's almost peaking, or the compressor is going crazy. So what? How does it sound? The ears, in my opinion, should have the final say. Yes, we have the most amazing metering. You can see the frequency spectrum in the EQ and see exactly where the fundamentals are. And it's like, now coming from where I come from, it's like, yeah, this is cheating, but I'm going to do it. But at the end of the day, like Ray Charles said, I love this quote: how does it sound, baby? You can talk about that all day long, but how does it sound?
Yeah.
And I have found myself, had a great mentor and friend, Joel Cameron, who always told me, I was mixing some drums with him, and he's like the drummer. And I was like, well, no, I think it needs a little bit more. He's like, no. Close your eyes and stop looking at that beautiful graphic EQ. Yeah. And I said, okay. And he says, now tell me what you hear. I was like, actually, it's overcooked. I need less top end. He's like, right. So psychosomatic, like you can just start tricking yourself. So the whole point of that is, the point of this book is to at the end of the day, learn to mix with your ears, but having frequencies that you can start with, that you can get there quicker, that is very helpful, and that's the hope of it.
So the book is specifically for music and film, right? What's the difference between the two? What are the major differences in mixing for music and mixing for film?
Does a music video count as in the middle?
Yeah, music videos are right in the middle.
The music video, that's the curveball. Yeah. Whenever I update this, is going to be music, film, and podcasts.
Oh, nice.
Because there's a lot of people have been using this in podcasts. I also
that's how we apply it.
Help. I help mix and master a podcast for Wiley ISD, and I'm finding myself using this stuff so much. I'm like, I should add that. But back to the question, like, what's the difference? There really isn't any difference. What I put it in there because I also teach, when I teach ear training, I reference this book sometimes, but I'm teaching film students, I'm teaching recording arts students, and whether you are trying to add more stick attack, just that attack sound from a snare drum, or you're just wanting to have more impact from the gunshot in the movie, it's all the same. Once you really see where everything is, if you want more stick attack or bang or what adjective you want to call it, it's the same. If you want more 808 energy, I really want to make it rumble, or you want to charge $10 more a ticket, and so you can sit at the D-Box seat at whatever, Cinemark or wherever that is, AMC.
Yep.
50 hertz.
It's Cinemark.
We were just talking about the Batman voice, Venom or whatever. If you really want to have somebody, this just unstable feeling, and you add 50 to 100 hertz of it's over, whatever, like, it's all about making your music or your film or your podcast have more impact. And especially in podcasts, I'm sure y'all know, sometimes there are voices that are fine, but every now and then they have that brain dart or something, and you got to turn it down. That's so much more pleasant,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, we had a guy early on who told us, he was
not
like,
naming any names.
No, yeah, I'll name Victor's name. So Victor called us and was like, "Hey, love the podcast, love being on, but I sound a little bit like a chipmunk on y'all's podcast. Do you mind remixing it, or you can send it to me to remix it?" And so he called us and told us, and we looked back at it and we were like, you know what this is? You sound like a chipmunk. Like, there's nothing, you can change your voice.
Yeah, he didn't intermittently go from chipmunk to masculine
we didn't
male.
like speed it up and transfer it. No, like, things need to drop. Other stuff has to happen in order for you to sound not like a chipmunk. So Victor.
Yeah.
Well, let me.
That's what's flying, Vic.
Well, I have a follow-up question on how to make me sound like Batman forever.
Okay.
And not the movie, but
Kevin Conroy?
That's not the one you want to sound like.
No. Yes, I realized as soon as I said that. That's not what I'm trying to say. Withdrawn?
Okay.
So restarting.
You want to sound like a vampire?
I want to sound like Batman into perpetuity. So
which Batman?
So that requires two things: getting close to the microphone, and Colton adding 50 to 100 what?
For you, yeah, I would turn up 100 hertz. And get
why not 50? I don't already sound like him.
So 50 hertz, I said 50 to 100 hertz. No, I said for you, it's for anybody, but like 50 hertz is like
I would think I would need
the
less.
earthquake.
Oh yeah, so it's like the super deep voice.
No.
Yeah. No.
No.
No, just regular no.
Sorry, I'm done.
Oh gosh, that's the episode 3 no that turned into the worst no of all time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, never mind. But okay, that's great. Thank you. I would love to just sound like Batman, and I want to get one installed on my throat so that I sound like in real life too.
You want a stoma device that only boosts 100 hertz?
Even better than boosting, just gain up the mic and whisper. And
Whisper.
They're usually not talking that loud. So
Oracle.
Such a valiant effort.
Yeah, thank you. I tried.
One of the things I really dig about the book, and that has helped me as I've endeavored to mix and master our podcast a little bit better to make Danley sound more like Batman, you have these really nifty QR codes.
Oh,
And if you were to scan these QR codes, they take you to little websites where you can hear the exact frequency that Wes is describing in the book, and kind of shape it in, or understand what he's talking about tonal shape and those kind of things. How well has that piece of the book, because I think it's incredibly innovative, right? But I know that this is also something that you've used with your students at MediaTech that have gotten to be like your guinea pigs of a sort, right? So how well has that worked? Like when you've sent a student home and you've been like, okay, check out the QR code, just by having them, listen to those tones and then come back, what is the difference in the way that they're able to recognize the tone? And are you seeing that those are becoming
It's
really
night and day.
effective?
No, yeah. It's huge for them because, I mean, any of us can guess. There's only so much, any of us, myself included, I'm only going to read so much about frequencies, but I need to hear it to really internalize it. And when the student, I talk about it, but then if I play a clip or they'll go and listen to it, even on the way to school, they're like, oh, that's when the light bulb comes on. Mm-hmm. And I have to say, I got to give props to my 14-year-old son, Eli, because I'm so old school. I was like, yeah, I should make a book and I put a CD in it. He's like, Dad, a CD? He said, you should do a QR code. I'm like, you're a genius. Sleep in the house tonight. This is great. So,
good job, Eli.
Thank you very
Well
much.
done, Eli.
It was Eli Martin's idea for the QR code, but it is turned out to be so cool. And this happened to be an accident, something I didn't even mean for it to happen. But with the QR codes, I can continually update and add examples, and nobody has to buy a new book. It's just so I can always update that. But back to your original question, like that's for me, everything is just hearing. I need to hear it to understand it. And so I can say, oh, if something is muddy, it's probably around 200 hertz. Okay, but let me show you what that sounds like. And you listen to a before and after and you're like, I understand that. Yeah. That's very helpful.
If they've purchased your book, right? They've gone to your website, which is up and it's beautiful. They've purchased your book, they've got it in their hands, and they're trying to use it in a setting where they're kind of isolated, right? So they're not like mixing with a group of people. They haven't had the technical education. Is there a specific place you would tell them to start? Like, do you start on page 1, or would you say, you know what, let's start with 200 hertz. You need to go to like chapter 3, and that's going to be the best place for you to start so that you can begin to recognize these things and then go back to the front and work things through. Where would you tell them to start?
I would tell them to start just to get a handle on where they're going. I think if you just go to just open the middle of the book and just click on a QR code, or if it's the Kindle, you can just click the link and hear what it's showing you. So you can say, oh, it's showing me before and after, or with and without this frequency. Okay. Once you kind of see where you're going, and that's, oh yeah, this is going to be very helpful. Then start at the beginning. The first chapter is all about what is, Hertz is not just a rental car company. It's also a measurement of sound. So know what that is. And, and but the whole point of this that I would add to that is, it's like it's called Break Room Audio is through the publishing and then Amazon. But Break Room Audio is the whole point of that is some of the most interesting things I ever learned was in the break room at work or in the studio, but it was real short and to the point, and it's not like scholastic and boring.
There's not a test at the end.
These chapters are written. So it's real short to the point. You can do it on your way to work if you're listening to it. But it's still very, very helpful because you can hear it, you can internalize it. So
right on. Well, that does lead us into our last segment. Wes, we've really appreciated the time, and we end all of our interviews with a segment that we call Controlled Rowdiness. Now, these are going to be rapid fire questions, which you can answer with as short an answer or as long as answer as you would like. Expect nothing from us by way of response or reply. There are no right answers, but there are several wrong ones. So make sure you don't step in those landmines. And Big Dan, we're going to send it over to you.
And with me, sometimes there are right answers. What is the greatest recorded live concert that you've seen, and why is it Use Your Illusion in '98 from Tokyo?
Use your illusion.
Oh yeah. Guns N' Roses.
That's the answer, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Cool.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And by the way, and what happened to that producer? By the way, go ahead.
Oh, is this Elvis? Is that what you're talking about?
Well,
Oh, the
who it
producer
was,
for
but
no,
he's
you're talking about the
amazing.
producer from that. Okay, what makes Michael Elvis Basket such a killer producer?
I'm unfamiliar.
Okay,
with
I wasn't sure if you picked that up. Okay, redacted.
Who is this?
Withdrawn.
Who is this person that you've mentioned?
He's
now
the producer
twice?
for Slash, so his solo stuff, I believe.
Oh.
And Alter Bridge, who's my favorite band.
Okay. I'm familiar with Jay Messina, who is also a producer for Slash, but not this one. I'll check him out.
I'm familiar with Carlos Mencia. So, what is, if your ears are your first best sense to mix with, your eyes are your second, what is the third best sense to mix with?
Olfactory. You got to smell it.
That's
good.
the correct answer.
That's good. And also, I like the way you changed that up.
Thank you. Go ahead.
All right. How many licks have you borrowed from Slash? Mine is at least 3.
That too.
You think 3?
107.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
wow.
That sounds more like what a good guitar player would say.
I mean, yeah. Starting with Sweet Child of Mine, of course.
Yeah.
Yep.
Have you tried his moves out? So there's the spinning, and he kind of like lifts his knee up. He kind of goes in a circle. There's a whole bunch of good moves that he has.
The only one I ever really tried to do was just where he's just playing, and the guitar's at his waist, and then he
lifts
puts
it
his
up.
leg up on the
Yeah.
monitor.
Yeah.
And nobody's ever seen his face, right?
Dude,
I don't
Slash
know.
is so cool.
He's
He
Captain
is.
Morgan for guitar players, apparently.
Yeah.
Just lifts the one leg and there he goes. What do you hate the most about Skywalker sound?
Ooh, that is, I don't know, inappropriate. That's my, yeah, I don't know. I don't know anything bad about them.
Why are you trying to start a feud with them on our podcast right now?
Yes. I don't know. I'm bad at these guys. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
Okay, I'll take you to a nice softball. You've got an artist you're working with. What kind of outing would you take a starving and emotional artist on to help dial them in for the studio?
Ooh, that's very good. I would take them to a coffee shop, not because it would help them, it would help me. And if I'm okay, we're gonna be okay.
Well, that is a good answer, but it's wrong. The correct answer is Dave and Buster's, because they can get an unlimited play event and they have food. So
Oh,
the
yeah.
starving and emotional,
That's
they'll
good.
have a great time and then they'll be ready.
Yep. What sense do Ray Charles and Stevie Wonder not mix with?
Their eyes,
It's a good call.
Why is that? Colton wants to know.
because they're blind.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Is Stevie Wonder blind?
Well, I did hear that he got a surgery where he could see, but I don't know if that.
I've seen that guy catch a lot of falling boom stands for a blind man. That's all I'm gonna say. Check it
Not
out,
sure.
internet.
Heard about that one.
Is there such thing that you go to school to learn as a producer, as an engineer, to dial in the drums? Is a boom chuck a thing that you've heard?
I've not heard of boom chuck. I've heard of boom chick.
Boom chick.
Oh.
Okay, what is boom chick?
Kind of like a country beat, like boom chick, boom chick, boom chick,
Yeah,
boom
it's the
chick.
same thing. They're just saying it wrong.
Yeah, they're just saying it
And
wrong.
then there's the Pat Boone, Debbie Boone, Phil.
Yeah.
You've heard of that, right?
No.
Pat Boone, Debbie Boone.
Oh, nice.
Pat Boone, Debbie Boone. There you go.
That makes sense.
Okay, you can feel free to edit that out.
Nope,
No, that was good. That was good.
That is
All
like
How you
dang.
doing? Hi, Mom.
Yeah.
I've said some dumb things already, so you're good.
What's your favorite
Okay.
sound that R2D2 makes?
Say that one more time.
What's your favorite sound that R2D2 makes?
Mine is definitely the scream when he gets hurt.
All right.
No robot would do that.
R2D2 does.
I know, but they wouldn't.
He's sentient.
Okay.
I like the last question if you want to ask that one.
I feel like I did it already, but the question is, do
Yeah.
you want to hear the most annoying sound in the world?
Yes.
I think I just did it. Kinda.
There it
It's-
was, yeah.
It's anything annoying.
Yeah. No, I was just going with the Dumb and Dumber.
Oh, I know.
Joke there.
I can't do that.
What hertz is that at?
Oh, that's
how many hertz? Yeah.
That one. That was like.
Okay. Yeah.
Like
6 to 1K.
That actually was as close as I can get.
500 to 1K.
Is that the most annoying range?
No, actually, 3.5 kilohertz is. It's the most sensitive in our hearing. It's like a baby's cry.
Huh.
Oh, see?
Babies are annoying.
Well, here's the thing, right?
They are at 4 a.m.
Yeah, well, I'm about to have my first babies, and
Congratulations.
Thank you. I need to know what kind of sound deadening I need to put in his room to cancel that hertz, so I don't have to wake up at 4 a.m.
It's still going to reach your ear, I promise.
If you hear it in the car, it's still not good enough.
It can reach my wife's ears. Yeah, but at 4 a.m. All right. Also, how do we solve the baby formula crisis?
Okay, I'll sub out another question. Very last question. You have to tell aliens have arrived.
Okay, here we go.
Aliens have arrived. They're going to destroy Earth unless you tell them something so awesome that they're going to move on and go find another planet to bully. What do you tell them? You have 30 seconds.
60 seconds.
Work to Barada Nikto.
Whoa, what was that?
Yeah. Give us some more of that.
What was Prada Nikto?
Gork Clack 2 Barada Nikto.
Is that Klingon?
Y'all don't know what I'm talking about?
Groktek 2.
No. Gorblack 2 Narada Nikto.
This meeting is over. No, it's that's a huge movie. What is it? It's that's how they got the Space Invader to stop.
Galaxy Quest?
No.
Super Troopers.
It's like black and white movies, but anyway, Gork Clack 2 Barada Nikto. Look it up. It's a thing.
Okay.
Nosferatu, the movie.
War of the Worlds, maybe.
Maybe War of the Worlds.
Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
I'm gonna look it up because this is a good point.
Gort, Clack 2, Barada, Nikto. Clack 2, Barada, Nikto.
That we don't know. This is a good point.
That was probably a bad answer. But that's
no. I think that's a great answer because you've spoken to the aliens in something that they'll recognize. Obviously, we don't know what it is because we're not that smart.
And there's some kind of evidence that it works. So in this case, it worked, and they moved on.
Okay, and also, this is why you're an instructor. You've just taught us about Gorblack 2 Narada Niktos. Do you want to
Nikto?
Michael Elvis Basquiat.
Yeah,
check him out.
What about?
He's my favorite producer. Seven Dust, Miles Kennedy, Tremonti. Cold Rain, Slash, Living the Dream. That's the album.
Okay, cool. Like
Falling in Reverse.
Has he done anybody good? Wes, thanks so much for being on the show, man. Tell our audience where it is that they can find your stuff.
You can find my stuff on Amazon.com and, of course, at MediaTech, because this is where we teach a whole lot more of that stuff. Both in I would like to say real quick, MediaTech teaches recording arts, associate degrees in film, animation, visual effects, acting, makeup, web design, mobile apps. Come check us out, MediaTech.edu as well.
And then do you have any social media stuff where we can actually follow you?
Yes.
Check out what you're doing? Where can we find that?
The Wes Martin.
Ooh.
Because I am the Wes Martin. So the Wes Martin for Instagram and the Break Room Audio because someone took Break Room Audio. So it's the Break Room Audio
and the Wes Martin.
Well, you heard it here, folks. Make sure you get the real deal when you go looking for your Wes Martins. There's only one. The Wes Martin.
You got it.
Thanks for being on the show, man. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on. See you later.
Wes frickin' Martin. What a fascinating dude.
Oh, yeah. Super cool. Again, we asked him after if he'd ever done voice work because he keeps cutting into these voices. He cut into Batman sounding a lot, but he's got a great voice.
Well, so much of it, and he told us this in the pre-interview, so much of it is like proximity to the microphone.
Yeah.
And like knowing the little tricks that you can do with the equipment that you have in order to get the sound that you want. That's one of the reasons why when you're looking at producing, having a technical knowledge of the equipment that you're using is so important. Like people think that you just go in and you plug in the instrument or you get in front of the microphone and then you just go and then whatever talent that person has, that's it. That's what's going to come out. so much of what you hear on an album has to do with the guys that are in the chairs, right? Like if you think about Spider-Man, right? The Tom Holland Spider-Man movies, right? Ned, the guy, I want to be the guy in the chair, right? That guy in music is the most important person whenever it comes to getting what you want out of an album and achieving the vision that you have for the sound that you want whenever you walk into the studio. More important than all of the other musicians that you bring with you, more important oftentimes than the music that the artists themselves brings. If there is a person in that chair that is unskilled or that is not listening to you as the artist, they'll waste your time and your money all day long, and then you're just out.
Well, I really enjoyed hearing from him on working with artists and building a relationship, because that is, again, I kind of joked at the end with, dealing with what outing would you take in a starving emotional artist on? But oftentimes they are, just like comedians are attracted to depressed people are attracted to comedy, right? Specifically being stand-up comedians. It's the same with artists. Typically, they're broken, and that's why they're so powerful. The message that they have. Yeah. If you've had a great life all your life, you might be able to write some songs. And that's probably a good question for our friend,
Ron.
Yeah, Ron Grimes.
Well, that one of the things that Ron said.
Tell me what's wrong, Ron.
Yeah, one of the things that Ron said, I think in his interview, as it translates here, is Ron mentioned that the best songs are written out of truth. They're written for a love of, the transcendent and universal truths that we can see and recognize that are part of the human experience. Well, so much of that is what translates into mixing. And Wes even said as much that, when you're in a room, you're not really listening to the real sounds. You're not listening to the sound truthfully. You listen to music in your headphones. You listen to music in different environments. And so mixing in a bad environment does the same thing, is it gives you a false impression of the sound. I think with any good art, and going back to an interview we did almost a year ago with Nancy Piercy, any good art, all of the people involved in it are trying to bring out a modicum of the truth that they experience one way or the other. And I do love the way that he talked about the trust that he builds with the artist, like what you were saying, like what you would do, how you build that trust with the artist, and then how you make the suggestions, right? In a way that is like,
knowing they might be vulnerable.
Yeah, and it's not offensive to the work, but it adds to it.
It takes vulnerability to walk into that building.
Oh, no doubt.
And play your music, or even before you get to the point where you're recording an album, having the vulnerability to go try it out. I'm trying to work up the courage to go try stand-up. Yeah. It's kind of terrifying. And it's the same thing for people that play music.
Yeah, and I think it's different experiences for everybody, right? So if you're going into a studio session with your band, you kind of know where everybody is, but you also are being judged by all of your closest friends with how quick can you get this part? How well are we playing together? There were times when I wanted to record with you guys in there to get feedback, and other times where I didn't want you in there at all so that I could get the thing done.
Especially if I was in one of my moods.
You're always in one of your moods.
Yeah.
So, the second thing is, as a side musician, if you come in to a session, right, the artist is intimidating to work with because they're there, they've hired you, and they're going to tell you whether or not the part that you've been working on for the last several days, if you come in prepared, he talked a little bit about pre-production, they're going to tell you whether or not the part that you've been working on, that you've created for this song, that you've been hearing in your head, whether or not they love it or they hate it. And so your heart is kind of bared out there. Like, this is what I've been doing. And like, no, that sucks.
Or this sounds just like a Velvet Revolver song.
Yeah. And then you got to, work that backwards. Likewise,
or just scrap
it, being judged by like all of the other musicians that are in there.
Yeah.
And for the artist, an artist coming in there and he's working with side musicians, he may not know what he's got. He doesn't know whether or not the musicians are good, bad, or indifferent, whether or not it's their first gig or their 1,000th gig. And because of that person now walking into that studio, that you're in this situation where You're trying to listen to what everybody else is doing. You're also trying not to make a fool of yourself. You're trying to get a good thing out of there. And the producer is really the guy that holds all of that stuff together. And Wes's approach to it was so cool and so relaxed.
Very
just
cool
even like
guy.
in the conversation with us, it was a lot of fun.
Go check out MediaTech.
Yeah, check out MediaTech Institute. He's the second MediaTech instructor that we've had on. If you want to listen to another one of them, it is Tiffany Vollmer, who is the voice of Bulma from the American versions of Dragon Ball Z and Dragon Ball Z Ultimate and a couple of others. Check out her episode. MediaTech Institute is absolutely phenomenal. Check out Wes's book, Mix With Your Ears, Not Your Eyes, available on Amazon. Links to all that stuff is going to be in the show notes, as well as Wes's Instagram, which he is really great about answering direct messages. And so if you've got questions, DM him and ask him, what's up? Hey, I've been trying to do this, or I was trying to work some stuff out in your book. Can you give me a little help? The guy's incredibly personable.
And get your son Eli to help you with QR codes.
Yeah. How do you forge a QR code? Anyway, thank you guys for listening to the Reverend and the Reprobate. Check out all of Wes's stuff in the show notes. Y'all have good gig, and we'll see you next week on the
I'm Wes Martin, author of Mix With Your Ears, Not Your Eyes, and this is why you should never listen to Reverend and Reprobate.